Hi there, I'm Setere and I'll share with you how I build Node.js RESTful API to handle CRUD operations on my data. I used Express, a popular Node.js framework for the backend development. I used Sequelize to create object models and connect them to the database. And I chose PostgreSQL as my database and connected it to pgadmin, which is this one, for streamlined management. Server.js is the main file that starts my server and sets up the Express.json middleware. Any requests with JSON data in the body will automatically be parsed by Express.json and added to the body of my request, which is then used in the task router to handle requests related to tasks. In routes folder in this file, I define my paths and RESTful routers, and for managing tasks, I'm using Express.router, and I'm calling functions from the controller module for handling requests. So in task controller.js, I have my functions such as getting all tasks, creating a new task, deleting a task, or updating one of them. And I'm importing a task model from task model.js to perform database operations on each individual task. In task model file, I created my task model using Sequelize and exported it to be used in other modules. Index.js creates a connection between my database and Sequelize model. This is my API endpoints table. Let's go for an example. This is a post request to the tasks endpoint with the JSON payload containing the title and description of the task I want to create. I can use Postman to make the request or this form in the client side. Once the user submits the form, in the client side, handle submit function fetch the specific API and the post request is sent to the server to create a new task. And once the server receives the request, it constructs a new task object using the request body with the provided title and description. Then it saves it to the database and sends a JSON response back to the client, indicating that, okay, the task was successfully created. I have a route that handles GET requests for tasks. When the server receives a GET request for task, it calls the getAllTasks function in handlers to retrieve all tasks from the database. If the operation is successful, it sends the task back to the client as a JSON response using because of the res.json method. So if an error occurs, it sends a 500 error response with a JSON error message. I also have request handlers for put and delete requests that handle updating and deleting tasks in the database. The put method is typically used to update an existing resource on the server. When a put request is sent to the server, the entire resource is replaced with the updated data sent in the request body. And with delete request, my entire task is permanently removed from the server. In an HTTP request, headers are used to provide additional information about the request and to set parameters for the request. For example, the content type header specifies the type of data that is being sent in the request body, such as JSON or XML. Another important header is CORS header, which is used to enable cross-domain requests. In HTTP responses, back the other way, headers are used to provide additional information about the response. I'm using RESTful APIs. RESTful APIs use HTTP methods to perform actions on resources, and they follow a uniform and standard structure. I can add authentication to my project by using various authentication methods such as token-based authentication. So where a token is generated after successful authentication of a user, this token is then sent with each subsequent request from the client, and the server verifies its validity to allow access to protected resources. And I can implement this by adding a middleware function to my project, to my server routes that checks for the presence of a valid token in the request headers. And if that token is not present or invalid, the server can respond with a 401 unauthorized status code, indicating that the user is not authorized to access the resource. HTTP status codes are 3-digit numbers that indicate the status of the request made by the client to the server, and status codes are normally grouped into 5 classes. There are various types of databases, and I learned relational databases, which are the tables at which they have relationships between each other, and like many to many or one to many. For example, a user can have different tasks, so this is like one to many relation. And I also learned object-oriented databases, so they store data in objects, and each object represents an instance of a class.